You don't descend because you're weak. You descend because every addiction recovery trick finally failed. The bottle is empty. The feed is dry. 3:17 a.m. Phone glow feels radioactive on your face, but the ache in your chest only grows. Why does relief vanish the moment you need it most? Stay, because in 40 seconds you'll know. Carl Jung called this silent hour the threshold of transformation. It's not when we rise, it's when we fall into the pain we've buried. This isn't collapse, it's initiation, your first step into shadow work, the unseen psychology of addiction. Scientists say over 90% of relapse happens in this exact neurochemical lull. Jung says the craving here is not for pleasure, but for truth. So tonight we descend into the abyss within to meet the shadow that's been steering every craving and to learn why facing it is the only way through. Descent isn't failure. It's the moment your psyche stops pretending, when the truth inside you demands to be seen. Carl Jung believed transformation doesn't begin in the light. It begins in the fall, not the kind that breaks you, but the kind that strips you bare. The descent into the unconscious isn't chaos. It's a return to everything you left behind. Memories you pushed down, feelings you weren't allowed to feel, beliefs that were never really yours. All of them exiled into your unconscious. And the craving? It isn't just for relief. It's for reunion. Reunion with the parts of you buried in the dark. Addiction in this stage becomes a map, not to escape, but to understand. Each craving is a clue, guiding you to the source of your pain. For example, the bottle you reach for might actually be pointing to an old grief, and the endless scrolling could be a sign of unspoken loneliness. Jung called it shadow work. The moment your pain stops hiding behind behavior and begins to speak through it. This is the descent, not into darkness, but into the truth you've been avoiding. Yet what truth waits in that abyss? The abyss isn't hell, it's memory. Not the kind you recall, but the kind your soul never forgot. The abyss is made of every suppressed emotion, every time you had to be strong when you weren't, every truth you silenced just to belong. It isn't evil, it's honest. And that honesty is what makes it unbearable, because to descend is to face what you've organized your entire life to avoid: shame, grief, loneliness that felt like extinction. Jung said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. That's the paradox. You think the abyss will destroy you, but what actually destroys you is avoiding it, because suppressed pain doesn't disappear. It disguises itself as addiction, as perfection, as the persona you think you need to be. The abyss isn't punishment, it's an invitation. So why do we run from it? Because we're afraid of what we'll find in the dark. If something in you stirred while listening, trust it. These aren't just ideas. They're fragments of a truth you've always carried. Subscribe to Deeper Rewind for more unspoken insights. The kind that don't just explain, but remember you. This is where addiction intensifies. The faster you run from your shadow, the larger it looms behind you. Not because you're chasing pleasure, but because you're running from pain. The drink, the endless scrolling, the overworking, the person you can't stop fixing. All of it becomes a ritual designed not to soothe you, but to keep you away from the abyss. Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. In other words, if you ignore your wounds, they'll quietly shape every choice you make. You're not broken. You're coping. It was how you survived. But the thing about coping, it keeps the pain close enough to live with, but never close enough to heal. So you stay trapped in a loop, reaching, escaping, numbing, repeating. And the longer you avoid the descent, the more the craving grows. Not because it's hungry, but because you've forgotten how to feel. But even numbness has its limits. There's always a moment when the coping stops working. You take the drink, and it doesn't numb you. You scroll for hours and still feel hollow. You chase one more achievement, but the emptiness still finds you. You smile through the pain, and the mask finally slips. This is the flashpoint, the moment of truth, when there's nowhere left to hide. The breaking doesn't happen loudly. It happens in silence, in that lonely hour, when the world is quiet and nothing can distract you anymore. Perhaps it's 3 a.m., and you're alone with only your thoughts. You realize the craving wasn't for pleasure. It was for presence, not with others, with yourself. The descent becomes conscious here. It's no longer something happening to you. It's something calling you to stop running and to begin remembering. At this crossroads, a choice emerges. Continue to run or turn and face what hurts. Carl Jung didn't ask people to fix themselves. He asked them to face themselves, to turn toward the pain instead of away from it. The descent, he said, is sacred because it's where truth lives, not the truth you tell others, but the one your unconscious never stopped carrying. This is the beginning of shadow work, the slow reunion with the self you cast aside. Jung believed that integrating this shadow is how we become whole, where you stop asking, "How do I make this go away?" and start asking, "What is this trying to show me?" The craving, the silence, the emotional collapse, all of it becomes language, the psyche speaking in metaphor. Suddenly you understand. Your pain was never the enemy. It was a messenger. And you realize you don't heal by defeating your darkness, but by befriending it. You are not asked to fight the abyss. You are asked to enter it with awareness, with open eyes and a willing heart. Because only when the wound is witnessed can it begin to transform. And only when the shadow is honored does it stop controlling you from the dark, allowing you to become whole again. The descent doesn't destroy you. It dismantles the illusion that you were ever fine. When you stop running and finally sit with the pain, you begin to hear it, not as punishment, but as memory. This is the second stage of addiction recovery, the most avoided and the most essential. Because without this descent, no real healing can begin. But something happens when you descend far enough. The mask begins to crack. Through those cracks, for the first time, you catch a glimpse of the authentic self beneath. If you've come this far, you're already braver than you know. In the next video, Stage 3, the persona breaks. We'll explore what happens when the identity you built to survive no longer fits the true self trying to emerge. That's when recovery gets personal. That's when it gets real. And remember, the cracks are how the light gets in.